advising clients across the country. Here he is, your host, J. Christopher Boyd.
All right, welcome back to Something More with Chris Boyd. Thanks for being with us. I have Jeff Perry with me again, but now we have our next guest, Mark Skala from the Cape and Islands United Way. Mark, it's great to have you back.
Great to be
returning
back.
guest.
Great to be back. I didn't realize I was going to have the powerhouse duo of you and Jeff today.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm a little intimidated.
It's fun to have you here. We, for our listeners, we are big fans of the Cape and Islands United Way, such an important organization in our community, all that you guys do to help identify where there's needs and how to address them and work with other nonprofits in the process. But let's always start off with tell everyone a little bit about the Cape and Islands United Way, how it's sounds like a really big organization, the United Way, but it's also very local.
Right. It's, every dollar we raise here stays here, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you to Asset Management Resource for sponsoring our Best Night event again this year.
Happy to do it. And we'll talk
Always-
about that in just a second.
Yeah. But again, the power of our donors and our supporters has really been phenomenal in the past few years, recognizing, even post-COVID, there are some lasting impacts that have unfairly burdened certain people. And we have terrific donors and sponsors who really make our work possible. Last week, we just handed out our community impact grants, and we do those on a yearly basis. And we awarded over $450,000 just in those grants last week, and that covers everything from education, health, financial stability.
Give us a sampling. I think it's so helpful to hear like specifics sometimes in this. I know you can't go through all of the recipients, but it's compelling when you hear about who you selected, why, what are they doing? I'd love to spend a minute or two on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what's wonderful is we have a very active and dedicated group. So they're each of our education, health, financial stability, affordable housing, all those grants.
These are your big pillars.
Those are our big pillars. Okay. And so as part of our impact grants, we have committees that screen and meet each of the candidates through the process. So it's and they're trying to look at things holistically.
Yeah.
A good example, education. We don't focus necessarily on during school education, but we put our emphasis on after school and early morning programs and enhancement to things that are going on in the school. So because we're trying to fill that gap
Makes
there.
Sense.
In terms of food and
so what's an example? Boys and Girls Club or
Boys
something
and
like
Girls
that?
Club is a great example of that. There are several organizations that fall under that education pillar where we're helping them out.
Is there a focus on early childhood? Any of that kind of focus as well?
It is particularly on early childhood. What we're trying to accomplish is changing that gap that exists. There's a real wealth gap, education gap,
when
health
families
gap.
can afford to have one parent at home, they tend to have a leg up, is what you're saying?
Correct.
So they're trying to backstop that, give people alternatives.
Right.
They don't have that option.
Right. Parents are working sometimes 2 and 3 jobs, and they have to have programs that their kids are going to learn from and feel safe in. And so that's where you would see like the Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, those educational opportunities where we're trying to help.
Great. So that's one pillar.
Yep.
What was some of the others?
Housing's another good example.
A huge issue. We were just talking about that before we got started. Yeah.
Housing's really the number one issue on Cape Cod. It's the impediment to many, many things if you can't afford your housing. The cost, as we've said, not only the cost, but the inventory. Used as a good example, my son, who's 27 years old, he's working a full-time job and a part-time job. He can't find available housing.
There's so
we still
few
live
of
at
them
home
for
with us.
year-round housing for people in that scenario.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the costs, I mean, even if you can find something,
It's
what's it cost? You know, it's like being in a big city.
It's absolutely being in a big city. My other son and his girlfriend live in Charleston, South Carolina, and they're paying less rent in Charleston, South Carolina, you know,
than what it would cost around here.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So we're trying to look at housing from a lot of perspectives.
This was a really big issue for you last year.
Yes, it was.
As well.
It was
kind of your big focus last year at the best night.
That's
event.
correct. We supported the Housing Assistance Corporation's Thrive program, which is geared towards child care workers and people who work with developmentally disabled, providing them with some rental assistance to be in it. Those are essential jobs and they don't pay very well. Right. And in order to keep people in those jobs, we've got to help them.
Give them a little subsidy.
So it gives them a little year or two subsidy to help them get on their feet.
So in housing, so I imagine Housing Assistance Corporation remains a vital partner.
Correct.
Did you have others?
Well, here's a good example. It's on a smaller scale, but we support the shelter, but what happens when they're ready to leave that shelter? Where are they going to go, and how are they going to, are they going to be able to stay out of the shelter and not have to repeat? So we provide a housing navigator through Catholic Charities, and that person's job is to help. You're ready to leave homelessness, but how do I get to my next step? And that person is guiding you through the process, making sure you're staying on track. So again, taking a holistic approach to how we can make a difference. And, sometimes it's in really small ways. And those small ways, people forget, have a huge impact.
Is an organization like Champ Homes or something like that an example in this space?
Absolutely. Perfect example. Champ Homes is another one of our Independence House. Another one because we're providing services for women who are facing that difficult
domestic violence or something like those.
And that's a housing issue as well. So those are the ways we're trying to address the housing issue.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so
housing took up, if I will say, housing was allocated the largest amount of that $450,000.
It's understandable.
Right.
Seems like just a shelter seems like one of these issues. So they're on various ends of the spectrum, that there's a great deal of need in our community right now. Do you think this is, you talked about impact, kind of impact investing as a charitable endeavor. Do you think, how do you measure that kind of impact? And I mean, this seems like such a very large challenge, demographic issues working against us and so forth. And just the zoning challenges that have been talked about. How do you measure, are we having an impact when it comes to addressing not just the symptoms of the problem, but the causes of the problem? Do you know what I mean? Like immediate issues that people are having, but how are we getting at the root of this and making it so it's not as problematic in the future?
I think it's a huge problem for all of us. Yeah. Every organization needs to work collaboratively who's addressing the housing issue, because together we can accomplish a lot more. We're, in our organization, we're trying to move that boulder up a hill,
right?
That's what it feels like. But when you have other people like Housing Assistance Corporation, and you have the group on the Lower Cape, Help Homeless Prevention Council, when you've got those people helping you push that boulder up the hill, it makes it a lot more manageable to try and get to it. But how do we measure? Well, we measure by these people have been able to stay in their home stabilization for 2 years now. There's 6 families. Another good example.
So there's like concrete people that you can point to and say, hey, we made a difference.
Correct.
But I imagine it's hard to say, how are we changing the system or, resolving the the underlying problems.
Changing the system is a lot bigger than I think most of us can take on.
It's true. That's true.
But if you can do little things to make a difference, those little things are going to add up.
I thought this, this last year or two, when there's been a focus on trying to address zoning issues, that's come across both from HAC and other organizations. Seems like it's the message is getting out there. But I mean, what a boring, bland kind of topic, but so critical, right?
Totally
to make it happen.
Absolutely, it's what drives everything. It's what drives everything. If you don't have a stable home environment, that affects everything you do. It affects your child in school. It affects you as a worker. So
it's so true.
It's a community issue.
So what were the other pillars we've talked about?
Health.
And then, how do you work on health?
Well, great example. One of our organizations that just received a grant from us was the Alzheimer's Support Group of Cape Cod.
Oh yeah, I've heard great things about them. We have friends who are involved with that organization. Great.
Yeah, anybody who's affected by dementia or Alzheimer's, they understand how difficult caregiving is. Right. And this program that we funded is for caregivers, and it's giving them a day out at a spa. It's getting their nails done. Yeah. It's just relief for the caregiver so that they can then go back and embrace the challenge that they have.
And this is, we see over and over again, caregivers get so drained, they don't necessarily take care of themselves, and they can end up becoming ill or just drained by the experience, that it can be problematic if they're not able to stay in the game. And we got two people who have problems.
Absolutely.
That kind of thing.
Absolutely. And so that's an important factor, and as we get older, some of us who are still blessed to have our parents or our parents-in-law are facing those challenges of
how do you deal with
it? And it's exhausting, and it's not easy because they're still your parents and you want to treat them with respect and dignity. Right. But at the same time, you've assumed the parental role. And so it presents a lot of challenges for caregivers. So
really true.
Anything we can do on our end, we're trying to do.
I would imagine an organization like Duffy or something like that would come to mind when talking about health.
Yes, Duffy. We work with Duffy Health Center. We provide grant for their In From the Streets program to bring the homeless in so they can stay overnight when it's cold. There's a lot of different.
So they're really more on the home.
Correct. They're more on the homeless side of things often. And so we're trying to look at it from different angles.
Right.
What's in the last 5 years, we've now gone from just doing grants once a year, our community impact grants, to now giving out grants in several categories. We now have what we call a micro grant program, and that's generally around $2,500 to $5,000. And that goes to smaller groups, volunteer kind of based. Good example, the Girl Scouts came to us in Sandwich and said, the community garden isn't accessible to people with mobility. And we'd like to make a project out of that, but we need the funding. So we provided them with $2,500 in funding, and they created raised beds at the community garden. So now people with mobility.
So a modest expense of the investment you're putting into it. What a big difference.
Absolutely.
That's nice. A nice community and it's good for the Girl Scouts.
And that program is partly funded by the Belzekian Family Foundation, as well as Eversource, National Grid, Granite City Electric. They're all, so we now have that program up to about $80,000 a year. We're putting micro grants out.
How great is that? So
it's awesome.
And does that have a different application process? Correct. Probably a little more streamlined.
Yes, it's much more streamlined because we're not talking about as much dollar value. Plus, we're rewarding those grants quarterly.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you do the 450 that you talked about, Is that something that's like an annual sort of process where you gather the grants and then make a
That's
decision
correct.
and so forth?
Yeah.
Whereas this happens more ongoing, huh?
Correct.
Yeah, nice.
Yes. And we also, our Women United has really emerged in the last few years. The harness and the power of women wanting to support women is really strong. And so,
Nice.
we're giving out grants through our Women United organization as well. So,
and how is that? I imagine that's focused on particularly issues
women and
that
families.
benefit women.
Women and families is pretty much the focus of Women United. So they're working with a good example, getting reading books to children who may not have access to new books.
Yep.
That's just one example.
Sure.
Another example is we raised money last year at our Women United event, The Power of the Purse, and we raised $25,000 for WeCan so they could open their new they could open their new facility in Hyannis.
Yeah, that's that's great. That's great. Yep. And so they have a facility in Hyannis now.
Yes.
Do they still? I know that one time they were trying to extend their reach to as far as Falmouth. Mm-hmm. Are they still doing that? Were they able to do that? That seems like it would be a challenge.
Yeah. Right now they've just expanded to Hyannis from Harwich. Terrific. So that's a really good start for them.
Yeah. Well, we kind of got sidetracked talking about all these great things. Let's talk about the 25th Best Night, a big fundraiser, but a lot of fun.
Yep.
And a great occasion. First off, if people are interested in learning more about it, they can always go to the website, capeandislandsuw.org. There's a /best night page if you'd like to go to it. But tell everyone a little bit about this year's Best Night and what it's all about.
Well, this year, as you mentioned, we're celebrating our 25th anniversary gala. Not too many organizations can say their galas or their events have been going for 25 years.
Amazing.
It has the momentum that it has. So
each year gets better.
It's crazy. And each year it's a great feeling.
It used to be, it was the last, prior to this last year, it was at a different location, but it was always a lot of fun. We had different food from different organizations and things. It was kind of that was a fun. I think last year though, wow, what a fun event! And now you've got it the same location. Correct. Tell a little bit about how that's structured and how it's different.
Previously when we had Best Night, we would ask restaurants to provide the food. Now, that's a real challenge in the middle of June, asking restaurants to not only give us the food, but bring somebody so that they can serve the food to us.
Right. Logistics was
a challenge. And I think it was
it certainly was fun.
Yeah. Although I think it asked a lot of our small businesses.
And I imagine that was a lot of challenge in the organization behind that to make sure you had the organizations and that they had what they need. Yep. And, just logistically, I'm sure that was a lot of heavy lift.
It was. And there was a lot of you had to get tables, chairs, you had to do everything. Right. And then we decided to look at a new venue, and it wasn't even built yet. It was the Pelham House Resort in Dennisport. And I knew John McCarthy because, believe it or not, I worked for his grandfather many years ago. His grandfather and his wife owned Bishop's Terrace Restaurant in West Harwich, and I was a bartender there for about 6 years. So I knew John, and he told me about this new venue. It wasn't even built, and we committed to it, but they have killed it at the Pelham House.
It is beautiful. Just for people, Jeff, you probably haven't had a chance to be there.
I have not.
It's an absolutely gorgeous view. You're right on the water. And the food was spectacular.
Yep.
It was just a great location and a lot of fun.
It's a great venue, and now they take care of all the food.
So they don't have all those headaches.
Right. Yeah. We don't have it, and it actually was more financially profitable for us to do it this way when you didn't have to rent a tent and the chairs and the tables and all. So we have to look at our responsibility of how much are we how much is this costing versus what's the money we're raising for the
Right.
event. But anyway, at the 25th anniversary event, we're going to be honoring 25 people who were critical in the early days of Best Night, because I asked Peter Meyer, you may know Peter Meyer
Sure.
as
Cape Cod Times,
the former publisher of the Times. Peter was the very first chair of Best Night. And
Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, fun.
So Peter, we had a great time reminiscing, and he said they had hoped it could become a signature event. I said, well, here it is, 25 years later, we sell out.
Well done.
We're raising over $300,000. I think you were visionaries.
Yeah.
So
For sure. Yeah.
so 25 people will be awarded they'll receive our visionary award. 5 of them will be posthumous, but it's a great way to celebrate.
So Peter was among those people.
Peter and his wife, Jeannie.
I saw Rich Brothers. I recognized
Brothers.
One of your predecessors, but he's still a big advocate.
He sure is. He's a terrific advocate.
But do you want to, I'm sure you can't go through everybody, I'm sure.
Right.
So Jeff and I happen to notice the Angelinis on there because we know them.
And they're in Florida now.
Yeah.
Yes.
As is Jeff.
We won't against them.
The Angelinis are about 2 miles from me.
Are they?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So
the Angelinis.
There was a great list of names.
Lorraine and Tony Shepley.
Yes. Big supporters for a long time.
The Belzekians.
Obviously.
Doreen and Chuck Belzekian. Actually, the second Best Night was held at their home. Originally, Best Night was held at the first year. It was held at the home of Grant and Helene Wilson in Chatham, and they're deceased. And the second year it was at the Belzekians, and it was raining. And Peter remembers the Belzekians being kind enough to let everybody come inside because it was under a tent. And Doreen remembers Peter trying to hold down the tent. He broke the sprinkler head.
Oh,
so not only was it pouring, but the sprinklers were going.
Oh, God. Terrible. That's fun.
Yeah. So
some great members
Butler,
of our community.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, please continue.
Patrick and Sue Butler.
Sure.
You know, it's a really terrific group.
It's a great list of people, and it's right available on the website. That's how I spotted it. I was looking it over and thinking, wow, what great legacy for all these members of this list to have been associated with this event, but really this organization. I mean, the support of, I'll tell you, early on, I probably told this to you when we've been doing the show for 16 years now. And one of our early,
you two were really young when you started, huh?
when one of the early guests I had was Rich Brothers, and he came on with Tony Shepley, and they each give each other credit for making the analogy of a mutual fund is a pool of investments that then the manager allocates to different choices of investments. But investors can pool their resources. And they were making the analogy, that's what the United Way is with charities and nonprofits, that, you can go to one location, the United Way, but know that they can identify the best selections within the community to have that impact. It's a great analogy, and I love it today.
It's perfect.
And it's really one of the things.
And civic rent was the other thing I talked about.
Civic rent. Perfect example to that. A gentleman had reached out to me, and we began a conversation this spring. He's from Dallas, Texas, but they have a home in Dennis. He grew up in Canton. He got a job with Texas Instruments. He did really, really well with Texas Instruments.
Nice.
And he reached out to me, and they've been coming to the Cape now for about 8 years. All summer. They bought a beautiful home on Bass River, but he wanted to do more in the community, and he wanted to see how he and his wife could make an impact. And so we chatted, and I knew I just had to close the deal on this, if you will.
Yeah.
And we ended up receiving our single largest gift from an individual or couple in April at $100,000 from these
fabulous people.
Yeah. That's the power of what people see the United Way is capable of doing.
Yeah, that's terrific. So,
And again, as we talked about our best night's just not about a fundraising event. It's a really important engagement event for us.
it's true.
And it's a really important opportunity to continue to get our message out there, to show our donors and our supporters, this is what you're doing. We're not doing it.
Yeah.
You're doing it.
Your dollars at work.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, if people are interested in attending, it's coming up on June 23rd. 23.
Yes.
Yeah. So in any case, what time does it start usually?
Normally it starts at 5:30 because it's always been held on a Sunday, but this year there was a conflict with the date, so we moved it to a Friday night. So it's going to start at 6 and it'll go till 10. And I was real nervous about switching it because it's traditionally always been
a Sunday,
the last Sunday in June. And everybody loves that it's Friday night.
I think it'll be
Right.
fun. It'll be fun. Yeah. I think it'll be a big hit. There may be a few tickets left. We're running out,
Yep.
but act before midnight tonight.
Correct. They can definitely log on to our website and see where they can check it out or get information and reach out to us because we do have a limited number of tickets available.
Yeah, I mean the space it held a lot of people, but it is limited.
It is limited. We limited they can handle more, but we're trying to keep it to about 225 because you want the breathing room. You don't want everybody.
And people like to mingle and be able to move around.
Absolutely, that's the whole point of it.
Right. It's a lot of fun, and the past hors d'oeuvres and the drinks and whatever. It's a fun time. Definitely attend if you have the opportunity. You'll enjoy it. Do you have the same MC or whatever for
John Terrio?
He always does a great job.
Oh yeah. John is John's like a one-man show sometimes. but again,
he's great though. He does a great job.
He's involved in the community and he knows a lot of people in the audience.
Right.
And he's not afraid to point you out and say, wait a minute, why is it your padlock?
right. But you won't have that problem. I'm enjoying it.
No.
No, but he does a great job and it's a lot of fun. Hope people will be there. Support a great organization. Mark, thank you so much for coming by. Glad we went a little bit off on talking about the important pillars of what you're doing. Even though we intended to spend more time on Best Night, but what a fun time. And thanks for being with us.
Thank you both. I appreciate
Mark.
Your longtime support and your encouragement. And we really appreciate the opportunity to be on here.
We appreciate all that you do. It's an important, as we said, it's one of for us, there's a few organizations that we just feel are really vital to the Cape and the work that needs to be done. And the United Way is definitely in that top of that list.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
You're listening to Something More with Chris Boyd, Financial Talk Show.
Asset Management Resources, LLC, and J. Christopher Boyd, CFP, provide investment advice on an individual basis to clients only. Proper advice depends on a complete analysis of all facts and circumstances. The information given on this program is in the nature of general financial comments and cannot be relied upon as pertaining to your specific situation. AMR, LLC cannot guarantee that using the information from this show will generate profits or ensure freedom from loss. Listeners should consult their own financial advisors or conduct their own due diligence before making any financial decisions.